If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. We have battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40k content every week. Thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by. This video is part 1 of how to build a Salamanders list. For part 1, we're going to be using the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. The Space Marine Salamanders are chapter compliant, meaning they do use the Space Marine Codex. There is a detachment in that Space Marine Codex that does have some Salamander themes with some rules to improve torrent and melta weapons, the Firestorm Assault Force. We will take a look at the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. We will go through the basics of building a Salamanders list with a guide to building a Firestorm Assault list. Let's take a look at the Space Marine Army rule, then the rules for the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. Our Space Marine Army rule is Oath of Moment. If your army faction is Adeptus Astartes, at the start of your command phase, select one unit from your opponent's army. Until the start of your next command phase, that enemy unit is your Oath of Moment target. Each time a model with this ability makes an attack that targets your Oath of Moment target, you can re-roll the hit roll. If your army does not include one or more units with the Black Templar, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Death Watch, or Space Wolves keywords, add 1 to the wound roll as well. And since the Salamanders are not one of those mentioned chapters, we would benefit with that +1 to the wound roll into our Oath of Moment target. Oath of Moment, a great army rule. Re-roll the hit roll for our entire army into that one enemy unit. It is only into that one enemy unit, but that one unit is in trouble. Salamanders being a non-divergent chapter means we would get that +1 to the wound roll into our Oath of Moment target, a very strong buff. Reroll the hits with +1 to the wound roll can output some insane damage into that enemy unit. The key to using this ability, making sure we are not using this on an enemy unit that we could take out without that big damage buff. We only get one enemy unit a turn as our Salamanders, so make it count. Don't put it on a unit of 5 guardsmen that you know you're just going to wipe off the table. Put it on their Baneblade, put it on their Rogaldorn, something that does need some reroll hits and +1 to the wound roll to really do some damage to. Now let's take a look at the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. The detachment rule is close range eradication. Ranged weapons equipped by Adeptus Astartes models from your army have the assault ability, and each time attack is made with such a weapon that targets a unit within 12 inches, add 1 to the strength of that attack. This detachment rule gives all of our Adeptus Astartes models ranged weapons the assault keyword. This means we can advance and shoot with our entire army. This adds a lot of potential speed and shooting range to our list. The army does not have any way to advance and charge though through stratagems or enhancements. We do have ways to increase the melee damage, but the Firestorm Assault Force is more of a close to mid-range shooting army. Moving on to our 4 enhancements. Our first one is Champion of Humanity, currently at 10 points, and this is Tacticus model only, meaning of course we can only put this on a character that does have that Tacticus model keyword. While the bearer is leading a unit, models in that unit can ignore any or all modifiers to their characteristic or to any roll or test made for them, excluding modifiers to saving throws. Then we have War Tempered Artifice for 25 points, add 3 to the strength characteristic of the bearer's melee weapons. Champion of Humanity, this is the best enhancement in the detachment. It is a shame we can only put it on a Tacticus model. Ignore modifiers is incredibly useful in 10th edition. -1 damage, -1 AP, -2 to the charges, anything like that, not anymore. We can ignore all of those negative modifiers. War Tempered Artifice, +3 strength can be useful, but it is not a must-take enhancement. Power Fist going from strength 8 to strength 11 is great for those attacks into those toughness 10 units. Strength 5 weapons to strength 8 can get us wounding on a 2+ against Space Marines toughness 4, but once again, it's not a must-take enhancement. And our War Tempered Artifice can only be put on Adeptus Astartes infantry character models, meaning we can't put this on a chaplain on bike or another unit like that. It has to be an infantry character model. Our third enhancement is Forged in Battle for 15 points. Adeptus Astartes model only, no real restrictions there, it just has to be on one of our character models. While the bearer is leading a unit once per turn, meaning we can use that in our turn and the player's turn, it's not once per battle round, even that right there is quite strong. While the bearer is leading a unit, once per turn after making a hit roll or saving throw for a model in that unit, you can change the result of that roll to a 6. Finally, we have Adamantine Mantle for 20 points, once again on any of our character models. Each time attack is allocated to the bearer, subtract 1 from the damage of that attack. If that attack was made with a Melta or Torrent weapon, change the damage of that attack to 1. Forged in Battle is another one of my favorite enhancements in this detachment. It can be used to help our unit deal more damage or give the unit a bit more defense. A Gravis Captain with Aggressors can give them a once per turn auto 6 save that adds some survivability to the unit. Adamantine Mantle, this enhancement on a Gravis Captain can make for a very tanky character. Still, for 20 points as of April 2025, it is useful, but not something I feel that needs to be in every Firestorm Assault Force list. That's our 4 enhancements. Let's move on to our 6 stratagems. We will start with a stratagem that's going to be in every one of our Space Marine detachments, Armor of Content for 1 CP. In your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, one Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that was selected as a target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks until the end of the phase. Each time an attack targets your unit, worsen the armored penetration of that attack by 1. This used to give our one Adeptus Astartes unit -1 AP to the opponent's entire army. Anytime anything targeted that unit, it was -1 AP. It was changed at the end of 2024 to target only 1 unit attacking our Space Marine unit. Still strong in the fight phase, since there is usually only 1, maybe 2 units activating into our 1 unit. The shooting phase is a bit more dangerous. We do not want to use Armor Content on a few AP2 shots, then not to have it for a bunch of incoming AP3 shots. We do need to pay attention in that shooting phase of what the AP of the incoming shots are. Like I said, AP1, AP2, save our Armor Content. But for those big las cannons, those big plasma shots, you might want to use Armor Content on those units. But a big tank shooting some las cannons into a unit, you want to use Armor Content on that tank. Our first few stratagems will be the stratagems that we can use on our infantry and other models. The last few stratagems will be the transport specific stratagems. Our first one is Crucible of Battle for 1 CP. In your shooting phase or the fight phase, one Adeptus Astartes infantry unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets the closest eligible target within 6 inches, add 1 to the wound roll. One of the best stratagems in the detachment, it is what adds some power to the detachment. +1 to the wound roll on torrent weapons and melee attacks is a strong buff to a unit. The Salamanders have access to that awful moment with +1 to the wound roll, so we do have 2 ways to get +1 to the wound roll in the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. Next up is Immolation Protocols for 2 CP. In your shooting phase, one Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase until the end of the phase. Torrent weapons equipped by models in that unit have the Devastating Wounds ability. This stratagem is going to be the most powerful weapon in our arsenal. Other times, it will be lucky to singe the enemy's boots. 6s can spike, and so can those torrent weapons we use this stratagem on. You spend 2 CP on 6 aggressors, but roll 4 1s and 2 3s for the amount of shots. That's not a lot of total shots to roll our 6s to wound for those devastating wounds. Infernus Marines with Vulcan though, giving them the reroll the wound roll can output some scary damage if they spike. 10 Infernus Marines with D6 shots with reroll wounds from Vulcan's Forge Father ability, we can really output some scary damage with these Infernus Marines using this stratagem. Next up is the 3 stratagems in this detachment that do focus on transports. The first one is Burning Vengeance for 1 CP. Our opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has resolved its attacks. One Adeptus Astartes transport unit from your army that was selected as the target of one or more of those attacking units' attacks. One unit embarked within that transport can disembark as if it were your movement phase and can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but it must target only that enemy unit that shot into our transport when doing so, and you can only do it if that enemy unit is an eligible target. meaning if they are 30 inches away, you can't jump out with some eradicators and shoot into that unit, since those eradicators do not have a 30-inch range. The trick with this stratagem is finding a transport and unit that is not too expensive for this stratagem. Hellblasters in an impulsor, or eradicators in an impulsor or repulsor / land raider. Our infantry unit does need to be in range to shoot, and salamanders in the Firestorm Assault Force like torrents and melta weapons with not a lot of range. If we want to be using this stratagem on the regular, we do have to build for it. Next is Onslaught of Fire from 1 CP in your shooting phase. 1 Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that has disembarked from a transport this turn and has not been selected to shoot this phase. Each time a model in your unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible target within 12 inches, add +1 to the hit roll. If 1 or more enemy models are destroyed as a result of any of those attacks, select one of those destroyed models. That destroyed model's unit must take a battle shock test. This is the least used stratagem for me in this detachment. +1 to the hit roll can be strong to buff units like Hellblasters or Eradicators. Once again, like Burning Vengeance, we do need a unit in a transport. Get out of that transport and then target the closest eligible target within 12 inches. For 1 CP, it is a bit too many hoops to go through for that +1 to the hit roll. Of course, if you're on turn 5, you do need to battle shock a unit to win the game, and you do have the opportunity to use this stratagem. Use it, of course, try to battle shock that unit. It's not really a stratagem that we're going to be using a lot throughout our games. Our last stratagem is Rapid Embarkation for 1 CP. At the end of the fight phase, 1 Adeptus Astartes transport unit from your army that has no models embarked within it, and 1 Adeptus Astartes infantry unit from your army wholly within 6 inches of that transport. Your infantry unit can embark within that transport. Restrictions: you cannot target an infantry unit that is within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, that cannot normally embark within that transport, or that disembark from a transport this turn. And that disembark from a transport this turn does hurt this stratagem. This is such a fun stratagem. A lot of tricks we can do with this one. Being wholly within 6 inches of that transport can be a bit tough, since we do need our entire unit to be wholly within 6 inches of that transport, not just within 6 inches. With careful movement, we can have a unit hopping into a transport in the enemy turn. It adds more overall movement and speed to our list. We can even use it to gain some extra movement, jump in on one side with Rapid Embarkation, then in our turn, we disembark 3 inches on the other side of that transport to make our movement and then charge. There is some ways to get some extra movement with this stratagem, and I do believe this stratagem is one of the more powerful ones. It just takes a little bit to set up right. That's our Space Marine Army rule and our Firestorm Assault Force Detachment rules. There are 2 different ways to build a Firestorm Assault Force list. One is a bit harder to set up for newer players. The other, and I will admit more effective way, is for players with specific models. The Firestorm Assault Force Detachment has 3 stratagems that need a transport vehicle, as well as rules to buff torrent and melta weapons. This makes Firestorm Assault Force list a bit difficult to source and buy models for. It can be an expensive detachment to start with. Luckily, we can build a more general list using the other 3 stratagems and the detachment rule to make an effective list. This list will have more infantry backed up with dreadnoughts or anti-tank vehicles. The other list will be a much more transport heavy list. Transports can be a bit strange with what kind of units they can actually embark with in each transport. I do have a guide on all the transports for the Space Marine Salamanders on the channel. I will throw a link in the description below for that transport guide. The Salamanders are a close range army. They don't really thrive on melee, but they do thrive on close range shooting. So we have a lot of torrent weapons, melta weapons, and there is some ways to get some melee threat. It's mostly close range firepower that the Salamanders use. We want to focus on units that do have strong close range to medium shooting. Now on to some unit types. When I build a list, I try to select units from the following unit types: primary, utility, and attack. Now these are not keywords we can find on the datasheet. These are my own category of units I use when I build a list. Primary to pressure objectives and score primary, utility to score secondary points, as well as add some buffs or abilities to help my other units. Finally, my attack units, the units I will use to attack the enemy's scoring and damage dealing units. This may seem simple, but they can make a difference between a bad list and a good list. Too many attack units, and we do not have enough primary units to hold objectives and score, and then we end up losing the game on points. Not enough utility in the list, we may end up with a good primary score, but still lose by a lot from no secondary scoring. It's not always 33% of our total points in each of these three categories. It does vary depending on your faction and detachment. The Salamanders and the Space Marines are meant to be able to do a little bit of everything: shoot, melee, and be a tough unit. Depending on the detachment we use, the amount of shooting, melee, or toughness will vary. The detachments will also vary in what kind of units and how many units we need in our primary, utility, and attack roles. The Space Marine range is huge. There are many different units we could use to fill these three different roles. Here are some examples of some primary units for the Space Marines. First off is the Blade Guard Veterans. The Blade Guard Veterans are one of the few infantry lists with a 4-up invulnerable that are not characters or terminators. They do have a decent melee threat. It is a shame it was not a bit higher strength than 5, and to tough targets, these are not near as deadly. The Blade Guard are one, if not the best unit to attach to one of our named Salamander characters, Adrax Agatone. Currently 80 points for 3, or 160 for 6, they are quite cheap for a 3 wound, 4+ invulnerable body. Next is the Infernus Squad. The Infernus Squad isn't the toughest unit, they do have a very dangerous Overwatch threat though. Then we can attach another Salamander's character, Vulcan Hastan. He doesn't actually need to be attached, he can just be in the army, but when Vulcan is in our list, all Infernus Marines in our list gain an extra OC, taking them up to OC2 per model. Vulcan can also give the Infernus Marines reroll the wound roll, and the Crucible Battle Stratagem can give them +1 to the wound roll. As of right now, I like these as my Torrent unit instead of the Aggressor unit. Next up is the Company Heroes. I wanted to mention this unit since they do make a good bodyguard unit for Adrax Agatone, or even better, Vulcan Hastan. It is a bit expensive at 105 points, but it is a great unit to keep Vulcan safe. Last up is the Intercessor Squad. These are great for holding objectives. They can sticky objectives, then move on to grab another objective or do secondary actions. These are just 4 examples of primary units. There are many more units you can use as a primary unit in the Space Marine range. I know a lot of Terminators came with that Leviathan set, so you can use Terminators as primary units as well. They just don't have as much synergy with the Firestorm Assault Force and the Salamanders. Let's take a look at some examples for some secondary utility units. First off, we have the Scout Squad, one of the best units we have in the Space Marine line for utility. They have the Infiltrate ability and the Uppy Downy ability. If there are no enemy models within 6 inches of the Scout Squad, at the end of the opponent's turn, we can take them off the board and then bring them back down in our following turn. We almost need these when we're using their transport heavy list. It helps stop the opponent from move blocking our transports in our deployment. Next up is the Infiltrators. These are one of the best units for keeping our home objectives safe from the enemy reserves. A 12 inches of Deny Reserves bubble is fantastic in the days of 10th edition of 6-inch deep strikes and entire Uppy Downy armies. Salamander's list, using the Firestorm Assault Force, is a close to medium range army. We don't like to turn around. Infiltrators help us keep pushing forward by denying the opponent from deep striking down and taking our home objective. We can put 2 different war gear options on the Infiltrators. The Helix Gauntlet models in the Bears unit have a 6-up Feel No Pain ability, or the Infiltrator Calm Array. Each time you target the Bears unit with a stratagem, roll a d6 on a 5+, you gain 1 CP. Most of the time, we take that Helix Gauntlet for a 6-up Feel No Pain. Our last utility unit example is a Lieutenant with a Combi Weapon. A great unit for secondary scoring. It's cheaper than an allied assassin while still having the Lone Op ability. A built-in reactive move if an enemy unit ends a normal, advanced, or fallback move within 9 inches of this Lieutenant with the Combi Weapon. Currently, 70 points is a good price for what this unit gives a list for scoring potential. That's 3 examples of secondary utility units. Now we will take a look at some examples for our attack units category. First up is the Eradicators. This is one of the best anti-tank infantry units in the game. They can have 2 Melta rifles and 1 multi-Melta per 3 models up to a 6 model unit. Strength 9, AP 4, Damage D6 with Melta 2. The detachment rule takes these Meltas up to Strength 10 when they are within 12 inches of an enemy unit. They have an ability to reroll hit, wound, and damage into vehicle or monster units, which makes them very reliable into vehicle and monster units. They do wear Gravis armor, which does give them a toughness of 6 with 3 wounds, but a slower movement with a movement of 5. Then we have the Aggressors. These are one of my favorite Space Marine units. Luckily, it is a good unit, and for the Salamanders, it is starting to be a bit outshined by the Infernus Marines though. A bit pricey as of right now. They are 120 points for a unit of 3 or 240 for a unit of 6. We prefer to have Flamestorm Gauntlets on our Aggressors in the Firestorm Assault Force. They are chunky models, toughness 6, 3 wounds with a 3-up save. No invulnerable save does make them hard to kill with small arms fire, but easy to kill with AP 2 or higher damage 3 attacks. Once this unit has lost some models, the overall unit threat goes way down. I still recommend having at least 6 in your Salamanders collection. They could get a buff at any time. They just need to stop paying for the sins of some other detachments. Last up for attack units is some tanks and dreadnoughts. The Firestorm Assault Force Detachment rule gives all of our Space Marine models the assault ability. We can advance and shoot our entire army as long as they are Adeptus Astartes units. It does give our anti-tank guns some more potential extra range and movement. Tanks like the Vindicator, who have a 24-inch range gun, advance and shoot is very helpful on the Vindicator. It can be great on Ballistus Dreadnoughts, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, anything with a big gun. You can advance that model to get some line of sight and still shoot, since we do have that Firestorm Assault Force Detachment rule giving us assault on all of our models. Now let's take a look at some of the top characters for the Salamanders using the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. Our first character is Adrax Agatone, one of the 2 Salamander named characters. Adrax is a melee-focused character. He gives his units melee weapons, reroll wounds, which pairs well with the Blade Guard veterans. He also reduces the OC of enemy units within engagement range by half. It does not hurt. He is a great looking model as well. Taking any one of these 2 Salamander characters is what locks us into the Salamanders chapters. No Ultramarine characters or any other chapter named characters can be taken when we have Adrax or Vulcan in a list. Next up is Vulcan Histan, the second of our 2 Salamander characters. I would say Vulcan is the better of the 2. He adds utility and damage to the Salamanders list. Any Infernus Marine model in the list gains 1 extra OC when we take him in our list. He also has an ability to give any torrent or melt weapon reroll wounds into 1 enemy unit with his Forge Father ability. On top of that, he can be an absolute tank to take off his Seeker of the Unfound objective, get him on that objective, and he now has a 4+ funeral pain and a leadership of 10. It makes it really hard to take the objective back from Vulcan when he gets on it. These next 2 characters are generic characters, but they are still very good in the Salamanders Firestorm Assault Force. Our first one is the Captain in Gravis armor, a great character to join with the Aggressor squad. He can reduce the CP cost of a stratagem by 1. If we look at our stratagems again, Crucible of Battle is 1 CP, we can reduce that down to 0. Immolation Protocols is 2 CP, that devastating wound stratagem, we can bring that down to only cost 1 CP. Next up is the Librarian. I like this character to join the Infernus Marines or another Tacticus armor unit. The Librarian gives a unit a 4+ funeral pain against psychic attacks. It is the 4+ invulnerable that he adds to his unit is what I like. It adds a bunch of survivability to normally 3+ save models. A Librarian paired up with some Infernus Marines can make a very tough and very hard unit to take out, especially if we do have Vulcan in the list, bringing them up to 2 OC per model. You plant them on objective, they have that very dangerous Overwatch threat. Now it's very hard to wipe that unit out with shooting if they all have a 4+ invulnerable save. For the Salamanders using the Firestorm Assault Force, transports will be important. I do have a transport guide on the channel. I'll throw a link of that in the description. For now, I'll just quickly go through some of our more important transports. We do have the Impulsor with a movement of 12, toughness 9, 3-up save, 11 wounds, 6 leadership, and an OC of 2. I won't go through all the abilities and all the weapons. We're just going to mostly look at the transport capacity for this part of the video. The transport capacity for the Impulsor is 7 Tacticus or Phobos Marines. It cannot transport jump pack models, Terminators, Gravis Marines, or anything like that. It has to be Tacticus or Phobos on the datasheet. Then we have the stock Land Raider, movement 10, toughness 12, 2-up save, 16 wounds, 6 leadership, and an OC of 5. The transport capacity for the Land Raider is 12 Adeptus Astartes infantry models. Gravis and Terminators take up 2 slots, while Centurions take up 3. We also have the Land Raider Redeemer, the same stats as the stock Land Raider, except it does have an extra 2 inches. The Land Raider Redeemer can transport up to 14 Adeptus Astartes infantry models. Gravis and Terminators take 2, Centurions take 3. We also have the Land Raider Crusader, but we also have the Land Raider Crusader with the same stats as the Redeemer, except the Crusader can transport up to 16 Adeptus Astartes models. Finally, for these transports, there are more. I do cover them all in that transport guide. For now, our last transport is the Repulsor. Movement 10, toughness 12, 3-up save, 16 wounds, a 6 leadership, and an OC of 5. The model transport capacity of the Repulsor is 14 Adeptus Astartes infantry models. Jump Pack, Wolfen, Gravis, or Terminators will take up a space of 2 models, while the Centurions take the space of 3 models. That's just a quick look at the transports we have. These will be the main transports that we will be using in the Firestorm Assault Force: Repulsors, Impulsors, and Land Raiders. Let's take a look at some lists for the Firestorm Assault Force Detachment. We'll start with some 1,000-point list. Our first list is an all-infantry list. Our Warlord is Vulcan Histan. For other characters, we do have Adrax Agatone and a Librarian with that Champion of Humanity enhancement to allow his unit to ignore modifiers. Our battle line, we do have 2 units of Intercessors. For other datasheets, we do have 3 Aggressors, 3 Blade Guard Veterans, a unit of 3 Eradicators with 2 Melta Rifles and a Multi-Melta, 2 units of 5 Infernus Marines, one of them to join Vulcan, the other to join the Librarian, and finally the Infiltrator Squad with the Helix Gauntlet. We're going to be joining that Blade Guard Veteran with Adrax Agatone as well. This list has a good mix of primary and attack units. Not as much utility units, but those Intercessor squads should do the trick for scoring some secondary scoring and just holding some objectives if we need to. Next up, for our 1,000-point list, we're going to look at our transport list. I do have 2 transport lists for 1,000 points. This one only comes to 985 points. Our Warlord once again is Vulcan Histan. Other characters is Adrax Agatone with a Lieutenant and the Champion of Humanity enhancement. For other datasheets, we do have a unit of 6 Blade Guard Veterans, a unit of 3 Eradicators, once again with the 2 Melta Rifles and the 1 Multi-Melta, 5 Hellblasters, a unit of 5 Infernus, and finally a 5-man unit of Infiltrators with that Helix Gauntlet. For the dedicated transports, we do have 2 Impulsors. For this list, we're going to join Adrax with the 6 Blade Guard and that Lieutenant with the Hellblaster squads, and those are the 2 units I will be putting in the different Impulsors. For a second transport list, it comes to 1,000 points. We do have Vulcan Histan once again as our Warlord. We only have one other character in this list. It is a Captain in Gravis armor with the Adamantine Mantle that gives him a little extra survivability. Battle line, 2 units of 5 Intercessors. For other datasheets, we do have a 3-man unit of Aggressor squads, 3 Blade Guard Veterans, a unit of 5 Infernus, an Infiltrator squad, a Scout squad, and finally a big Repulsor with a Twin Las Cannon and the Las Talon. This list is more if you don't have the double Impulsor. It does have a big transport capacity, so we can put quite a bit of our models in this if we need to. I also wanted to have one 1,500 point list in the video. I have been asked a few times for a list like this, so I might as well throw it in here just for those people who are wanting a 1,500 point list. Our Warlord is Vulcan Histan. For other characters, we do have Adrax Agatone and a Captain in Gravis armor with the Forge in Battle enhancement. For our battle line, 2 units of 5 Intercessors. Other datasheets, we do have a big 6-man squad of Aggressors to join with that Captain in Gravis armor, 6 Blade Guard, a 5-man unit of Infernus squads, 5 Infiltrators, a Repulsor with a Twin Las Cannon, and a Repulsor Executioner with the Icarus Rocket Pod and Heavy Laser Destroyer. Finally, a Scout squad to infiltrate or block the enemy from trying to hem our transports into our deployment. I was thinking about putting the Captain in Gravis armor with the Aggressors in the Repulsor, and then Adrax with his 6 Blade Guard inside the Repulsor Executioner. Now let's take a look at some Firestorm Assault Force 2000 point list. Our first one is an all infantry list once again, and this list comes to 1,995 points. Our warlord is Vulcan Histan. For our other characters, we do have Adrax Agatone, a captain in Gravis armor with the Forge in Battle enhancement, a lieutenant with the Champion of Humanity enhancement. We do have 2 librarians, one of them has the Adamantine Mantle enhancement. Battle line, 2 units of 5 intercessors. Other data sheets, the big 6-man squad of aggressors with the Firestorm Gauntlets, 6 Blade Guard veterans to join up with Adrax Agatone, a squad of 3 Eradicators, 3 Inceptors with the Plasma Incinerators, then the big primary unit, 3 big units of 10 Inferno squads. One of them will be joining Vulcan, the other 2 will be joining up with the Librarians. To round out the list, we have a 5-man Infiltrator squad and a 5-man Scout squad. This list comes to 1,995 points, all infantry with no transports. We can still run this kind of list with this detachment. It won't be quite as strong as a list with a few transports in it. Still viable, just not quite as strong. Next up is our 2 transport 2,000 point list. Our first 2,000 point transport list, our warlord, once again, Vulcan Histan. Characters, Adrax Agatone, lieutenant with that Champion of Humanity enhancement, and a captain in Gravis armor with the Forged in Battle. Battle line, 2 units of 5 intercessor squads. For other data sheets, our 6 aggressors, 6 Blade Guard veterans, a unit of 3 Eradicators, a 3-man Inceptor squad with the Plasma Exterminators, a 10-man Inferno squad, 2 5-man units of Scouts, and then finally, our big transports of the list, a Land Raider with the Multi-Melta and Hunter Killer Missile, and a Land Raider Redeemer with the Multi-Melta and Hunter Killer Missile. The Land Raider Redeemer has a transport capacity of 14, so that will be holding the aggressor squad with the Captain in Gravis armor, while the other Land Raider could either have Vulcan's unit or Adrax unit inside. The last transport list, and it comes to 2,000 points. Warlord, Vulcan Histan. Characters, Adrax Agatone, lieutenant with Champion Humanity, a captain in Gravis armor, and a lieutenant with the Combi weapon. Battle line is just 1 5-man Assault Intercessor squad. For other data sheets, 6 aggressors, 6 Blade Guard veterans, 3 Eradicators, a 5-man Hellblaster squad, a 10-man Inferno squad, 5 Infiltrators with that Helix Gauntlet. Rounding out our infantry is 2 5-man units of Scouts. The transports for this list, we do have the Repulsor with the Twin Las Cannon and the Las Talon, a Repulsor Executioner with the Icarus Rocket Pods and the Heavy Laser Destroyer, an Impulsor with the Stormbolter, Heavy Stubber, and Missile Array. So there's lots of transports in this list, lots of way to bounce around, get inside some transports, get some extra movement. And with the Repulsor and the Repulsor Executioner, we can actually have some decent anti-tank shooting, as well as moving up the board in our transports. I hope this video has helped those starting with the Salamanders or anyone who has been playing the Salamanders for a while in the 10th edition. Part 2, I was thinking of adding another detachment to my Salamanders. I do not own all of the transports. My options for playing lists with the Firestorm Assault Force on the channel are limited. I have recently added about 1,500 points to my collection, a few Dreadnoughts, lots of Terminators, and Infantry. What other detachment would you like to see played as the Salamanders? We will still use Adrax and Vulcan in that detachment. I'm leaning towards Gladius, since that is one of the more stronger beginner factions. It also powers up a lot of the general units in the Space Marine line, so I do believe the Gladius task force will be next. Throw it down in the comments though of what detachment you think the Salamanders might be good in. Once again, we're still going to use Adrax and Vulcan to make sure it is Salamanders. We're not just going to use Guilliman and have a few Flamer units in there and call that Salamanders. I do want to have Adrax and Vulcan in our list. Throw it down in the comments, subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40k content. Like always, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.